without dealing with these issues. In fact, many people would say that these issues are the most debilitating issues that we have. It's stress, depression, and anxiety. You know, if you were to ask everybody, what is it you really want? What is it you really want? I would say near the top of the list is peace. Peace. You know, throughout the world right now, you're hearing about all sorts of wars going on, right? Gaza, Ukraine, all over the place there's war. The interesting thing about wherever there is war, countries cannot progress. They have to use all their resources into fighting a war. I wonder if we could close that door at the side as well. That would be wonderful. So you have to use all your resources to fight a war. That means you can't invest in your education, you can't invest in your healthcare. Nothing can go forward unless you are at peace. And you know what? It's very similar to what goes on inside of our own bodies. Think about yourself emotionally. You can't concentrate until you're at peace. Think about the physicality of our bodies. If you're constantly under stress, your body can't perform properly. So whether it's war outside, in our minds, or in our bodies, we all need this peace. I don't know if you realize this is the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. Yeah? United States of America. 250 years ago, they separated from Great Britain and became a country. But they had to fight a war to do that. Only when they fought that war and they won that war against the British were they then able to have some peace, start to prepare, start to plan the country that is today. It's still the most powerful country on earth. Think about the things that people desire. We desire a successful career, money, good health, family relations. All of those things, we believe if we get them, we will get peace. The desire of the world is to have peace. And so when we're dealing with this issue, stress, depression, and anxiety, they all rob us of peace. So what I would like to do is just share with you some of the ways that we can deal with it. Now let's just look at a few definitions. You may not see this in the textbooks, but if you're really trying to sum up what these things are, stress is about worrying about what's going on now. Depression is about worrying what happened yesterday. And anxiety is about worrying about what's happening tomorrow. Stress is for the present. Depression is about the past. Anxiety is about the future. You know, many of us, we were just talking about it this morning, holding on to the past keeps us in depression. Not being able to appreciate the present and worry about the future keeps us in anxiety. So we have to find ways to overcome these things. And peace is the obvious goal. What on earth is the science of stress? I'll give you a little bit of the science behind it. What's going on? You see, anytime you find yourself in a position where you're stressed, it means that there's some kind of stimulus, something has happened, and your body is now responding to it. How does your body respond? Well, there's an area in the brain. It's actually called the hypothalamus. It kind of detects everything that you don't think about but is vital. So the temperature, threat levels, all sorts of things are detected in the brain, in the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus then releases a hormone, and it sends it to this little area on top of the kidneys called the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands then release adrenaline and cortisol, and many more things. But adrenaline and cortisol are the things that cause us to respond in stress. Now that's good. If you didn't have that response, well, your body couldn't even stay awake. Some of you couldn't even stay awake right now. Some of you are having difficulty doing that right now anyway. But yes, so the more stress hormones you have, the more alert. Think about Usain Bolt at the beginning of the 100 meters. His body is pumping out lots of adrenaline, lots of cortisol to prepare him for a task. But that task is supposed to be only temporary. When it's short term, that's fantastic. It keeps you awake, awake, you're able to perform the task. If it's long term, if that stress is constantly there, that starts to cause us all sorts of problems. And where does it cause us problems? We've talked about it, hypertension. It thickens the arteries, makes them less elastic, the blood pressure goes up. Heart disease, similar. When you're stressed, you literally wipe out the immune cells in the body. If you have a big argument with somebody, those immune cells that go out looking for cancer, well, they get wiped out. If you have a life like that, well, obviously you're increasing your risk of cancer. Irritable bowel syndrome. You've heard of that, right? Irritable bowel syndrome is really not a problem with your bowels, because you will have all the examinations known to man and your bowels will look perfect, but your bowels will be irritable. Why should that be? Irritable bowel is a direct function of stress. Once you deal with stress, the IBS goes away. It's the same with migraines and insomnia. These three, IBS, insomnia, migraines, are functions purely of stress. We've got lots of drugs for them, yes we do, but unless you deal with the stress, those issues are going to stay the same. I need a victim. I mean volunteer. Victim, volunteer. Now I have to, now you sit down. You're always volunteering. Come on, yes, come. Yes, you. Yeah. Stop your drawing and come forward. Now. Great. Now, why are you hiding behind me? Okay. Now, can you pick that bottle of water up? Okay, just hold it in one hand. How does that feel? Okay. Now, what if I told you to hold it for 10 minutes like that? Is that all right? Be difficult. 10 minutes. What if I told you to hold it for an hour? Even worse. A day. Yeah, that would be a bit too much. Thank you. You can take a seat. Thank you so much. Look, I like to use that example because stress is like holding a glass of water. If I tell you to hold a glass of water for a few seconds, nobody cares. It's fine. It's okay. If you hold the glass of water for a few minutes, it becomes a bit uncomfortable. An hour, you get pain. A day, yeah, you would get stiffness, numbness, your arm wouldn't even be able to work properly. That's kind of how stress works on the body. If you have it for a short period of time, there's no problem. But when it becomes chronic, it starts to destroy our bodies, inside out. In fact, it's also important to remember that it's not the stress that is the problem. It is our response to the stress. Yeah? You can be in the most stressful situation, but it won't kill you because you respond better. This lady, Elizabeth Blackburn, she got the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2009 just for proving this very fact. And that is, whatever environment you find yourself in, if you can change the way you think about it, rather than a threat, it's more of a challenge, it can reduce your stress levels and you will live longer. Now, depression is very much like stress, but it has a few things added on. Now, we've said you're always looking back. You're constantly finding yourself thinking and thinking and thinking about your loss, your pain, your problems. It's like a spiral staircase going downwards. You constantly think about yourself, and that leads to all of these issues. Things like a loss of motivation. You forget about your eating. You forget about how you look. You lose interest in most things. Okay, it's a devastating place to be, and people on the outside don't understand. They'll say, oh, just cheer up, but they don't understand what's going on inside. The more that we ruminate on the past, the more stuck we become. So we're going to have to learn how to come out of this anxiety, this worry about the future. Most of the things we worry about never happen. Most of the things we worry about never happen, but we find ourselves in a state where we are constantly fearing the future. And as you fear the future, physical things happen. You get palpitations. You can feel your heart in your chest a lot of the time. Headaches, poor sleep again, along with insomnia, all of that. These are physical things that start to happen when you don't deal with the big anxiety. Well, what does medicine have to say? Well, medicine has a lot to say. Some of the most common drugs in the world are to deal with depression and anxiety. But what does that mean? What are they doing? This whole science of antidepressants started on the fact that people said, in our brains, there's a lack of chemicals. There's a chemical imbalance. So because there's a chemical imbalance, we will give you a chemical, an antidepressant, and that will get rid of the problem. Now, I've highlighted it here because I don't think most of you will believe me when I tell you that that theory is not true and never has been true. And you can check it out. That says Nature, that's the journal, Nature, 2022. You look it up. It did a huge study of all of the studies on depression. All these theories of, there's a chemical imbalance, and it showed that there was absolutely no truth to it, and there's lots of studies backing that up. So you ask yourself, well, if the doctors for decades, for over 50 years, have been giving me drugs for depression based on a false theory, well, why do they still prescribe them? And even more interestingly, why do they actually work? Right? Do they work? People who take antidepressants, sometimes they feel better. Did you know that? Yes, you can say it. It's okay. It's not heresy to say that. So there are people who are depressed. They go to the doctor. They take an antidepressant, and the depression kind of goes away. That happens. So if Dr. Chidi is telling us that it's not true, how does it work? Well, let me explain. It's a bit like this. Let's say I have trouble going to sleep. And you say, well, Dr. Chidi, why don't you have a whiskey each night? That will make you go to sleep. And I go to sleep. So it worked. I'm now not asleep. I'm now asleep. Does it mean that my brain was lacking in whiskey, which was why I could not sleep? No. It just means you've given me a drug that runs roughshod over everything in my brain. That's exactly what happens with antidepressants. They are not replacing something that's lost. They are running roughshod over the chemicals in your brain, and it causes long-term problems. It's like you have a tree that's dying at its roots, yes? So it's going brown, all the leaves are going brown, and somebody comes along and just sprays the leaves green, so it looks good. It does not deal with the root problem. And that's what we do with drugs. Now, before I go further, I have to be very, very careful with you all. And this caution, because some people may go away thinking, well, Dr. Chidi said I should come off of my antidepressant drugs. You can all see that. Never stop medication suddenly, apart from statins. Never stop medication especially antidepressants. Never stop them. Because what's happened is that the drug has now changed the nature of your brain. If you just withdraw them, you are going to be much worse than before. It's one of the most dangerous things you can do. But thinking about the drug, look, it has a lot of problems. The drugs have a lot of problems. They cause disturbing thoughts. Now imagine you take a drug to combat suicide, but one of the side effects is suicidal thoughts. I'll be even more frank with you, since we've gotten to know each other a little bit more. They don't just generate suicidal thoughts, they generate homicidal thoughts. Now, every now and again, sadly, you hear of these individuals who go into places and just shoot the place down. It could be schools, it could be a church. You hear about this in America, right? What you never hear is how many of those people were on antidepressant drugs. You never hear it. I can guarantee that the vast majority are on antidepressant drugs. You know, I never used to understand, why would a person go into a school and do, I mean, it's crazy. But you find most of them are on some kind of medication, and a side effect of that is not just suicide, but homicide. And as I've said, it makes the brain start to change, it starts to adapt, which is why you can't come off the drugs so quickly. Now look, I'm not against medication. Medication saves lives, right? If you have a heart attack, I want you to have all the medication. Somebody's saying, well, give them some broccoli juice. That's not good. You need all the medication you can. But then they don't get to the root of the problem. Okay, what we have to learn to do is, yes, have a drug to bridge the gap, but at the same time, let's change the lifestyle so that we can overcome. Now, what do we have to do? This Life Colours is a holistic approach. And let's just look at it. Because there are some simple things that we can do and some slightly complicated things that we need to do. And I like to say that it's about the meals, the movement, and the mindset. The meals, the movement, and the mindset. Number one, low-hanging fruit here, low-hanging fruit, avoid the poisons. So we're talking about stress, anxiety, and depression. All of these things make them all worse, right? So, and these drugs, they make them worse because they go straight into the brain and they have an effect. Even when you think about something like caffeine. Caffeine is the world's most common drug. More people have caffeine. About 95% of the world's population imbibe caffeine in some way. And what is its effect? Its effect is it makes your nerves fire a lot quicker. So it helps people to stay awake, right? But that energy has to be paid back somehow. So unless you keep taking the drug, you start to go on a low. In fact, they did an experiment with a group of typists in America. They gave one group caffeine, one group no caffeine. The ones with caffeine, they could type an awful lot quicker, but they made 10 times the number of mistakes. So it's not about, it keeps you alert, but doesn't keep you accurate. Tobacco and alcohol, well, you know, they're destructive not just to your mind, but to your body. Recreational drugs. You know, this one is a symbolism of cannabis. Now you keep hearing that cannabis is a soft drug. It's not a soft drug, it's a hard drug. Why do people take cannabis? Come on, why do you take cannabis? You take it for medicinal reasons, do you? Oh, I was asking. I was just trying to catch people out. Okay, so they take it for medicinal reasons. That's true, they do. But the general population, why do they mostly take cannabis? What's the point of taking cannabis? To get high. You take it to get high. A high? What sort of a high? What sort of a high is cannabis? What sort of a high does cannabis give you? Come on, those of you who've taken it. Escape reality. But also, it's a kind of a chill-out drug, isn't it, cannabis? A chill-out drug. You know, you take cannabis and you chill out. You don't take cannabis to do anything exciting in life. You do it because you just want to be at peace. Am I not right? Yes, that's right. I know you don't want to admit this. You know what I'm talking about. See, the problem with the brain is that the brain doesn't like interference. The brain is like a perfectly balanced seesaw, right? And when you tip it in one direction to make it more chilled or peaceful, your brain will release all sorts of chemicals to bring it back to equilibrium. Yeah? Now, the drugs that it releases in itself to bring it back to equilibrium therefore have to make you more alert, right? Then when you take the cannabis away, so it was down like that, the brain has brought it like that, you take the cannabis away, it tips in the other way. So now, rather than being chilled out and at peace, you get a little paranoid, you get a little anxious, you can even tip over into schizophrenia, right? So when we say that cannabis is a mild drug, it's the complete opposite, right? So the easy thing to do is to avoid the poisons. The second thing we want to do is to avoid SDA food. And by that, I don't mean avoid the lunches at church. I mean the food that causes stress, depression, and anxiety. Sugar is up there at number one. Sugar excites. You know, there was one time I was in Nigeria and there was a lot of children who were having seizures, all right? And they'd been to all the hospitals. And they said, well, Dr. Chitty, is there anything you can do? I said, well, look, without me even knowing them, the first thing you can do is make sure there is no sugar in their system. All but one of those children had no more seizures, just by eliminating sugar. You know that if you give children a lot of sugar, they become hyperactive, right? You know that. Well, now think about if you're on the border of having seizures and you give the children sugar, that hyperactivity tips over into seizures. So avoiding sugar, it will actually help, just like the heroin, it will help you to release and relieve yourself from those stress, depression, and anxiety elements. Animal fat and protein, it's filled with things that excite the nerves. Filled with things that excite the nerves. So the more you can get rid of that, the better. By the way, I mean, you can do an experiment on yourself. If I have something quite sweet as well, sweet and fat, the next day, when you eat it, you feel very good. That's why we call it comfort eating. But you are left with a downer at the end of it. So it plays havoc with the mind. What about this? You want to overcome stress and depression? Start with a fast. Why should I say that? Why should I say that? You know, if you want to gain mastery over anything in your mind, any kind of addiction, any kind of problem, the first place to start is master what goes in your mouth. If you can do that, you can do just about anything. And just having one fast gives you an awful lot of energy to overcome any kind of problem, especially psychological problem. And obviously, we've spoken about this, eat a healthy, plant-based diet. You've heard about this, plant-based this? You've all signed up to it? Yes, okay. Honestly, listen, you might think I'm joking or just because my wife's here. I used to have a couple of restaurants in my life, plant-based restaurants. They were award-winning restaurants, if I do say so myself. You don't mind me boasting a little bit, just a little bit, okay? I had great chefs there. We produced great food. But what you see in plant-based eclipses that. So you've got healthy food. This is the thing that's for me. Healthy food that looks beautiful and tastes wonderful. That combination. When I was a kid, I didn't realize that was possible. That's why I started up my restaurant. I didn't know you could have healthy, good-looking, plant-based, lovely tasting food. Here we have it with plant-based cis. Look into that. Now, this is just a summary, but this is what I want to tell you, because this is quite important. We want to overcome stress, depression, and anxiety. There are certain physical things we need to do, walking, strength, mobility. But if you want a real prescription, you can't go better than the fruits of the Spirit. You can't get better than the fruits of the Spirit. I'm only going to highlight them, okay? Because if you really want peace, one of the first things you have to have is patience. Right. Why must you have patience? If you're impatient, what's going on? You're getting stressed about things that are in your little world. Everything must happen in your world at the right way, otherwise you become impatient. That's generating stress upon stress in your life. Okay? So once you acquire patience, and patience comes in little bite steps. I remember once I was at a red light. Sometimes the red lights, they stay a lot longer than they should. I needed to get somewhere. I was getting stressed. But I noticed the person in front of me was listening to music and dancing in their car. We both had the same amount of time to wait. But she was enjoying herself and I was getting stressed. There are different things we can do to increase our patience. Kindness and goodness. If nobody's told you this, you should hear it. One of the quickest ways to break a cycle of depression is to do something for somebody else. Just something small. Something small. Why does that work? It works because you take your mind off of yourself. That spiral of thinking about my pain, you just break that cycle by doing something small for somebody else. It breaks the cycle and lifts you out of depression. Self-control, really everything positive you want to do in your life has a foundation of self-control. If you cannot control yourself, nothing can be done. And by the way, if you look at all the prisons in this country and abroad, all of those crimes are done because of a lack of self-control. Alcohol, violence, whatever. So we have to learn how to get self-control. Joy. Now this is something, as a church, we need to embrace more of. We need to embrace more of the joy. Not being sad Adventists all the time, but embrace the joy. Yeah, the young people know what I'm talking about. We seem to think that being holy means that we have to be miserable. You can't be a holy person and happy and jolly. That's not what the Bible says to me. A merry heart does good like medicine. That's where we need to be. Embrace the joy of life. Now you are at an advantage because you live in one of the most beautiful parts of the country. Don't take it for granted. Get out there and embrace the joy of the environment. It's fantastic. Honestly, it makes us, we were smiling all the way up here, because we're from down south. Forgiveness. I'm going to say that at the heart of most illnesses, if you want to overcome it, you're going to have to learn to forgive. All the studies will tell you that people who can forgive early have lower blood pressure, lower risk of cancer, lower rates of Alzheimer's. People who can forgive early have stronger relationships, because we can let go of these little hurts. Once you can do that, you don't just become physically healthier, but emotionally healthier too. And then love. We don't talk about that enough. Everybody needs somebody to love, and everybody needs somebody to love them. But you know what? You can only reap what you sow. Many of us are waiting to be loved without giving out any love. If you want to be loved, if you want to be appreciated, you have to give that out of yourself, and you will reap it. You will reap much more than you sow if we can learn to love. Right, okay. So if you take some of those bits and put them together, you will realize, if you look after your mind and your body and your spirit, it will take you back to a place of peace. In order to get to peace, you have to invest in all of those areas. But it takes us also back to the beginning. I said that stress was worrying about today, depression was worrying about yesterday, and anxiety is worrying about tomorrow. Do you know, we serve a God who is a God of today, of yesterday, and tomorrow. Wherever we wish to worry, God is there. When you are worried about this issue that's trapping you in depression, God is there and He sorted it. This issue that you're facing today that's causing you so much stress, God is here. Speak to Him. He can relieve that stress today. And in fact, He tells us all the time, if you're worried even about tomorrow, do not fear. He's there. He's seen it. He's done it. You know, the way we think demonstrates whether we have faith or whether we have fear. God is telling us, do not fear. Because that fear is the enemy's way to draw us down. Physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Okay, I'm open for any questions now. Yes, sir. What is your question? What's your question? What was it? Move your body with purpose. Exercise, yes. Exercise, yeah. Move your body, even if you say not purpose. Move your body. You know, especially for men, everybody talks about prostate cancer a lot. I can tell you about diet, that's one thing. But for men, you must move every day. You must move a lot every day. You know, sometimes when you use the word exercise, it puts people off. Just move. Just walk. We've seen studies whereby people who've been diagnosed with prostate cancer, by going into some extreme movement daily, it reverses the prostate cancer. It goes away, it disappears. So you must move every day. Yes. Any other question? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for this presentation. My question is on
You're asking me, is there evidence that it's happened? Okay. Well, let me deal with that one first, then you can do your second one. So there's a whole body of evidence for it. I mean, even in my own, I've got lots of video testimonies of people who've been on all sorts of medication. They changed their lifestyle. And, you know, I don't actually have to tell them to come off their medication. Once they get involved with this program that we give them, they're still on medication, but their blood pressure goes so low that they have to come off. Even their doctors have to admit it. Doctors are never keen to admit that you have reversed your disease, whether it's diabetes, blood pressure. But when the doctor says, well, your blood pressure's now so low, obviously you're now going to have to come off the medication. So there's not just my own evidence in what I do, but there's a lot of evidence out there as well of what people have done. And it's been out there, I would say, for the last 30 years. Hypertension, 95% of hypertension, you know, we say it's essential. 95% of hypertension can be eliminated. You know, get rid of the disease and get rid of the medication. But yes, there's so much evidence. One of my favorite clients was a gentleman who's one of these hedge fund bankers. who his wife brought him to me because he didn't want to come. He didn't believe in all of this rubbish mumbo jumbo. But what he did was he did exactly what we told him to do. And he then, you can see him online on the YouTube, he has now taken it upon himself to talk about this all over the world because his life has now changed. So yeah, there's lots of evidence. There is no doubt that you can reverse it. What's your next question?
Yeah, so even with diabetes, there's been some evidence to that. And the question is, why is it not being taught in medical schools? Because in medical schools, we are told that if someone is hypertensive, we need to give him the medication.
Yes.
Of course, we start with lifestyle intervention for some time, and then if it doesn't work, we have to put you on medication, which we have to take religiously almost every day. So why is it not being taught in medical schools?
Yeah.
Your specialty, sorry, this is the last question. Your specialty, is it in the UK, is it recognized specialty under the GMC?
All right, I'll come back to that. But you asked, why isn't it being taught? How many doctors do we have here? Any doctors? How many? One? No? Any others? Just one? Just the one doctor? Well, okay. Where were you taught? Zimbabwe, okay. So it's not really different to anywhere else in the world. We were taught, as you said, in medicine we're taught, here is a problem, and this is the solution to the problem. So you have high blood pressure, this is the medication you use, you can change it to this, to that. If this doesn't work, this operation, this stent, this whatever. That's medicine today. Now, I do not blame the doctors, but the education system that we're in, that we're taught in, I'm going to say is a little bit corrupt, okay? And it has become a factory for maintaining the pharmaceutical companies. This is not how it used to be. This is not how it used to be. Now, I will just invite you to look into history. Look into history. Most countries, Western countries, African countries, Asian countries, have all had a background of using nature to stay healthy. And sometimes it wasn't even nature. I mean, it wasn't even a prescription. It was just, this is how we lived. You know, we're out in the sun most of the day. We're doing physical work most of the day. Our food is just plants and grains and beans and seeds. Maybe we'll have a little bit of meat every now and again. There was no refined sugar that we consumed. We didn't smoke tobacco or drink alcohol, so people were generally healthy. But if they did get sick, there were natural things that we could do for them. Now, what then happened, you remember this gentleman called Rockefeller? Rockefellers. He used to own 95% of the oil in America, richest man in the world at the time. Without going into it too much, the president of the day, Roosevelt, broke up his companies. So this man said, I still need to make a lot of money from my petroleum. I'm going to invest it in drugs. I'm also going to invest it in the medical schools to teach people to sell my drugs. That's where we got this modern medicine from. Anybody who said anything about natural remedies, we'll call them quacks, we'll get them kicked out of their profession. And we're still there today. So we as doctors, we go into medical school thinking, oh yeah, we're learning medicine, but we're really learning how to administer drugs and medicines and procedures. That's all it is. Why are we giving so much medication when you can reverse it? Why? What's the point of that? Why are there type 2 diabetics on medication that they don't need to be? If you know you can get rid of it. When I started doing this, the medical profession used to say, oh, Dr. Chidi is a quack, doesn't know what he's talking about, you can't reverse diabetes. This was 25, 30 years ago. It's absolute rubbish. But then they realized when they started doing these gastric band operations on obese people, oh, their diabetes would go away as well when they couldn't eat as much. Oh, so maybe, and now they're trying to introduce things into the NHS about reversing diabetes. It's slow, but if you're going to wait for the government to tell you what's healthy, you'll be waiting a long time. The government is funded by a lot of these institutions. One last thing, you hear in America this institution called the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. Food, Drug Administration. They promote certain foods that will lead you to take certain drugs down the line. And the people who own most of the food companies used to own the tobacco companies. They know how to keep us addicted. Yeah. I'm telling you more than you asked, but you've opened up a little floodgate in my head. And is lifestyle medicine registered? No, not really. No. I mean, from 20 years ago to now, I mean, I do teach some courses in different universities, that's fine, but it's not a fully registered profession. In America it is right now. At Johns Hopkins they teach lifestyle medicine. Great. Next question. Yes.
I'm just wondering, what is it about working night shift that makes it so easy to get stressed? Like, I know it's not normal because you have to be sleeping, but it's just something thinking of one is trying to keep the body in some. It's just still an underlying level of stress and anxiety that just does not come.
Yes. So the question is, what is it about working night shift that makes it so easy to get stressed? Well, in a short way, I can tell you, if you ever wanted to see me miserable, see me on a night shift. I always felt that I should never be here. I should be asleep. And I was right. You know, we're not supposed to be up at night. And because we're not supposed to be up at night, our cortisol levels in our brains are much higher at night. Okay? And then actually it makes us eat more, and it makes us even worse the next day. So just the basic level of our hormones keeps our stress levels higher at night, and we shouldn't really be working, but somebody has to do this job. If we didn't do it, what would happen to the patients? But what I always say to people, when I used to do nights, we used to do 7 nights straight, but then we would have pretty much 2 weeks off to recover. So I'd go away on holiday or something like that. That's normal. But now I don't think they're allowed to do that. So it's difficult to manage. But one thing I say to people is, try not to eat on your night shift. You can eat at the start before you go, eat when you come back, but don't have these meals at 2 o'clock in the middle of the night thinking it's your lunch. That just mucks you up totally. Okay. Fantastic. Next question, yes. Well, as with everything, you have to get to the root of the problem. So nobody has stress, anxiety, or depression without a root cause. As I said, it's not a chemical imbalance. There is something emotional that has happened to bring them into that place. And so you then have to reveal it and uproot it, okay? Nobody can just say to you, okay, this is what I want you to do, without going into the depths of what has happened. And whether it's a hurt, whether it's something that needs to be forgiven or discussed, that's where you must start. And on top of that then, you do all the other stuff that makes it easier to recover. So you improve the diet, but the diet alone is not going to pull the person out of that depression. You have to really get to the root of the problem, and that takes talking. All right, thank you. So what you're asking is, can a bug in your stomach produce it? No. A bug in your stomach can produce the symptoms, acid in your stomach, but not the root cause of the emotional problem. No, the bugs don't do that. It's the other way around. Yes, yes, yes. That's right. Yes. It's not really possible to get the slides because they don't mean much unless somebody's explaining it. But I think, because you mentioned young people earlier. So if I was going to talk to a younger group, as I've said, every aspect of health helps every other aspect of health. When we're talking about young people, they're not so interested in Alzheimer's and heart disease, and they're not interested in that. But they are interested in how they look. They are interested in how they perform physically, emotionally. They are interested in their careers. And you know what? All of these principles help with those issues too. So what I would suggest is that there's different talks for young people, more targeted towards them. That would be more useful to them. Okay? And I can either send them on to you or put them online. Okay? Yes.
Would you mind if you can share your life with them maybe? Since they're not here. So would you be okay if we ask you for 1 moment?
1 moment. 1 moment's easy. I'm sure that's possible. I'm sure that's possible. Yes. Medical cannabis. Okay. All right. I'm going to give you a little bit of history first. Do you remember in America there used to be this thing called prohibition? You remember that? That's before our time, but you know what it was. When people couldn't drink alcohol. Alcohol became illegal. How did they get around it? They got around it by saying, well, there's some medicinal alcohol. Medicinal alcohol. Have you heard of that? Yeah, so that's what they used to say. Well, I'm not drinking it for me, I'm drinking it because it's to make me healthier. And the same thing is now happening with cannabis. But I'm being a little bit facetious because actually there are some things in cannabis that are medicinal. I have seen with my own eyes how certain cannabis strains have been used to treat cancer. I've seen it. Obviously, it can reduce things like fits and seizures. People can use it for symptoms in things like multiple sclerosis. But that's really like the drug form of cannabis, in the same way that I'm not going to give you heroin, but I might give you morphine that comes from heroin for pain relief. Okay, so there's a doctor nodding, so I must be saying the truth. So what you can do is extract the good out of cannabis and treat it as a drug, certainly. But the smoking of cannabis and the eating of cannabis in its ways, which cause this kind of hyper-anxiety, paranoia, and schizophrenia, no, I would never promote that. In Portugal, they made it legal over the last 10 years, cannabis. The numbers of people with schizophrenia has gone up. I can't remember the figure. It's over 1,000% or 1,200% schizophrenics. People have now lost their minds. It's legal now in South Africa. That explains a lot of what's going on in South Africa. What they're doing to the Nigerians in South Africa. But no, I couldn't recommend it. Great. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I would say the best time to exercise is either just after or just before your shift. So before you've relaxed and gone to sleep, or just before you go on your night shift, best time. In fact, I would say the better one is the one just before your shift, because then by the time you finish your shift, you're then really tired. You can sleep properly during the day. Sometimes it's very difficult if you're on a night shift to sleep properly during the day. As I say, that's why I was so miserable when I used to do them. Yes?
When we look at diabetes type 2,
Yes.
and we look at hypertension,
Yeah. Yeah. So in this life colours, diabetes is purple, hypertension is orange, and heart disease is red. Okay. Obesity is blue. Okay. So blue and red makes purple, right? Yes. So blue, obesity, heart disease together make diabetes. And the reason why I did that is because you will hear of this thing called metabolic disease. Metabolic disease, right? What is that? You know, you're overweight, your blood sugar's high, your blood pressure's high, all those sorts of indices. You're living a lifestyle which forces you down the route of metabolic disease. And by the way, it may hit you with high blood pressure, it may hit you with diabetes, it may hit you with both. But I often say, if somebody has heart disease and they're obese, they may have diabetes. If you deal with diabetes, these two go away. Yeah? If you deal with obesity on its own, a lot of diabetes goes away, not all of it. But they're mixed. It's a mixed picture. Metabolic disease is kind of like the disease of the West. We eat too much sugar and fat, we don't exercise enough, we're stressed out of our heads. All of that leads to metabolic disease, and it shows itself in diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. But also, something else you said, many of the drugs we take, many of the hypertensive drugs, lead to diabetes, right? Bendrafluoride leads to diabetes. Many of the drugs we take for diabetes leads to hypertension. I mean, it's almost as if there is this plot to keep us unhealthy. It's almost, I mean, I'm not telling you that, folks. Well, I am telling you that. Let me give these drug companies credit. They are incredibly bright people. Incredibly bright people. I never even believed it at the time. But they generate medicines that, you know, they don't give you an instant problem. They'll give you a problem down the line. And so you've been on their drugs for 10 years, and after 10 years it will give you a new problem, which means new sets of money for them. I mean, they're very, I'll give them, they are bright. But there's a way out. We don't have to follow that way. Sadly, many of our doctor colleagues are not aware of this. Many of our doctor colleagues would be absolutely antagonistic about even what I'm telling you. It's dangerous. Dangerous, Dr. Chitty. Yeah. Much safer to take drugs that cause side effects for the rest of your life. There you go. There you go. Sorry? Yeah. Well, I'm used to bad press. Don't worry. Sir. Right, okay, that's an interesting one. So I want to make sure I understand your point. Are you saying maybe some of us are going for help too early when we don't need to? That's what you're saying. And also maybe what you're saying, do we need to get professional help sometimes? Well, let me answer them both. I think when it comes to emotional issues, mental issues, everything is being medicalized. when you see, there is a big book, it's called DSM, for diagnosing psychological illnesses. It's the Bible of diagnosing psychological illnesses, and it's forever increasing. One of the latest conditions is called post-bereavement syndrome. Bereavement, which means if somebody in your family dies and you are still grieving after 2 weeks, you have post-bereavement syndrome, which can be treated with medication. 2 weeks. Listen, I mean, 2 years you can still be in that place. But they've brought it into the DSM, so we can now diagnose you. You can now go to your psychiatrist and they'll give you medication because you are still feeling grief for a loved one. This is nonsense. Yes, absolute nonsense. Yeah, that's right. Now, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't get help. There should be people you can talk to. Psychotherapy, fine. Talk to somebody. Sometimes our anxieties have come from a warped way of thinking. It's important to talk to somebody about it, right? That's wonderful. But when they start telling you, not just talking, but we need to give you a drug for something emotional that has happened to you. Now, come on, that doesn't make any sense. You don't have to be a doctor to know that. I didn't get this problem because I'm lacking in a drug. I've been through grief. I'm allowed to go through grief. But yes, that is my point to you. I'm not against people getting professional help, talking therapy, that's wonderful. But going for the drugs, I'm not sure there is ever a need to go for drugs for that sort of issue. All right? Okay, thank you. ADHD. Okay, people are trying to get me into trouble now. Okay. Soon it'll be vaccines. I've given them ideas. Yeah. Yes. ADHD. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Let's just think about those words. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity. Isn't that all children? What? Attention Deficit Hyperactivity. That's children. I was that when I was a kid. No, I couldn't sit and listen to a long, boring sermon by Dr. Chiddy. I couldn't do that because I wanted to be doing all sorts of other things. Hyperactivity, yes. I mean, look, many of you have children, but it makes me smile. I will see husband and wife with children walking down the road, right? Husband and wife walking down the road like this. The children are all over the place. The children don't just walk down the road. They're jumping on the wall. They're running after each other. They're chasing it. That's what children do. Attention deficit hyperactivity. If that isn't the mother of all made-up conditions, you're describing children. Now you'll say to me, yes, but some children, they are, yeah, as I said before, look at what they're eating. If they've got lots of sugar in their diet, they'll be even worse. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, should I go there? Yes. I'll tell you something else. There are some things that make it worse. And, I can go there because it's not me. I can quote the study. The study is called the Henry Ford study, done at Johns Hopkins University. You remember Johns Hopkins, Ben Carson's place, one of the best hospitals in the world, really. The Henry Ford study on vaccinations. They compared children who had no vaccinations to children who had the normal vaccinations. In the children with no vaccinations, not only could they not find any ADHD, they couldn't find any autism, they couldn't find any, well, very small episodes of asthma, eczema, in the children that had no vaccines. So there you go. I've just put a nail on that. What's the second part of your question? So type 1 diabetes is not like the type 2 diabetes where you have insulin resistance. Type 1 is where you can't make enough insulin because the pancreas, which makes insulin, is destroyed in a way, usually destroyed by an autoimmune problem, okay? So you treat it like an autoimmune problem, you give them enough vitamin D, you still have to manage the sugar in their diet. In my practice, 70% of type 1 diabetics can be reversed, 70%. So it's possible to reverse. If you think about it, if you have a slightly functioning pancreas, because most of your organs are regenerating, if you take away the external forces, well, that pancreas will start to regenerate properly. So about 70%. There are some that cannot be changed because their pancreas is totally dead. But yeah, it can be managed. Did you all hear that? Did you all hear that? Let me just say this. What was said, are you a nurse then? Diabetes nurse, fantastic. So what was just said, when you first diagnose somebody with type 1 diabetes, there is a honeymoon period. What does that mean? It means that the pancreas is still working a little bit, is producing insulin. What do we then do? Well, not we, I don't put myself in that category. What do the hospitals then do? They pump you full of insulin, which makes your pancreas go to sleep. So now it cannot work. It cannot work. I mean, it's like they are deliberately trying to destroy our health. You have this honeymoon period where you have a pancreas that's partially working, and you just pump them full of insulin so that the pancreas goes to sleep. I have had lots of issues with certain hospitals, because when the parents come to me for help, I'm telling them to do something that the hospital's not telling them to do. And there have been all sorts of issues of, oh, you're neglecting your child, we're going to take your child away from you. It's serious, it's serious. But really, if people were to do what I've told them to do, the pancreas most of the time recovers. Yes. Yes. That's right. That's right. You've killed them off. Because the body has this feedback mechanism. If you have lots of insulin in the system, it says, okay, you don't need any more. If I'm injecting you with insulin, the body says, I don't need to give you any more. Yes, so I treat them. I'm not going to give you the whole thing now, obviously, but I treat them. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yes, next question. Yeah. No. No. In an emergency, what you're really saying, no, there's no lifestyle medicine in an emergency. If you're having a heart attack, diabetic, ketoacidosis, no, you need to be stabilized with all the medicines available. So what we do well in medicine is emergencies. We can save lives in emergencies. But anytime we start talking about chronic problems, we're useless. Yeah, absolutely useless. But in an emergency, anybody who says to you, oh no, do this that is holistic, and no, you need the proper treatment. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a number of people today, Dr. Colin Campbell,
Nobody knows me either. I'm sure. No, I was trying to count myself among the great men. That's all. I was just trying to push myself in there. But there's a reason why that we don't know them. Well, you'll look at YouTube and stuff like that. You push certain narratives that get suppressed. You cannot. If I say to you, right, yes, take the normal medication for diabetes, and I give you a way of dealing with diabetes with medication, that will be promoted highly on YouTube and the internet and everything like that. You try to tell people to come off their medication, no, they don't like you. They don't like you. There is a system at place which wants to favour people taking medication. Yes.
Sort of had a question, not related to that, but leading on from that. In your presentation today, haven't really seen anything about the, obviously, stress, depression, anxiety. You haven't mentioned anything about technology, the influence of technology. 2007, that's when we saw the first smartphone. What are your thoughts on stress, depression, anxiety, when to the fact that the world is totally different to when we were young?
Yes.
Totally different.
Yes, and it's going to get worse. It's continue to get worse.
Stress, depression, anxiety.
Yes, it's going to continue to get much worse with all the technology that comes. Yes, I mean there could be a separate talk or series of talks on technology and what it's doing to our minds. Addiction, stress levels, depression levels, comparison levels. We can do that. I was just really dealing with the basics of the emotion, the physical and the spiritual. But yes, it's not only is it worse now, it is going to get a lot worse because children are much more addicted. Yes, okay, so I mean our children, when I think of the TV shows I grew up with, very, very basic, innocent TV shows, and we didn't have TV all day either. They've got something all day, all night. It's a disaster. But let me say this. When the government then says, there is a problem, we can protect you. We can introduce a law to ban children from doing A, B, and C. You have to be very careful. Because that is a route by the back door, not just to deal with children, but to deal with you. For example, there's this bill that they want to put through, okay, let's get rid of children going onto social media before the age of 16. Sounds good. How do you know if a person's 16 when they go onto social media? Oh, you mean I have to give evidence of who I am to get onto the internet? This is all the way pushing down the route of identity cards and all of that stuff so that you can be traced. So don't be fooled by the government when they say, okay, we're going to help you out with your children. Children are our responsibility, they're not the government's responsibility. If you really want to limit what they do, you do it, not the government. There you go. Okay. Yes. No. No. No.
With the health check that when you come in, you need to be checked.
Yeah.
There is things that we put in that part.
Yes. So let me be careful. It could be that she had diabetes that she didn't know about. That's a possibility. It could be. But there is something about getting into the treadmill of the medical system. You know, once you start, they find more and more things, and they give you medication that causes more problems. Yes, I'm a doctor, but I'm absolutely confident that most of the chronic issues we don't need doctors for. We need them for emergencies, definitely. You break a bone, you need somebody to fix that bone. You have a heart attack, you need some. But a lot of these chronic things we just don't need. The sad thing is most people don't know this. And that's why we do all these sorts of talks. Marvelous. Yeah. Yeah.
Rest in peace, SBA. What made you interested in them? That can also make us interested in also seeking others in the same area.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a good one. And I'm going to broaden it out just a bit more because I came to this place. I was raised as an Adventist. I was a child in the Adventist church. And I used to hear about Ellen White all the time. But Ellen White, it would be said, Ellen White says we must not do this. Ellen White says we must not do this. I was a kid in the church. I thought, who is this miserable old woman? I mean, she only seems to be saying everything boring and negative. What kind of a miserable... In fact, I think I was 10 years old, let me have a read of something that she's written before I discard her completely. I don't know what told me to do that, but let me just have a... And I came across this book, The Ministry of Healing. When I was 10 years old. I didn't read all of it, but I read bits of it. And even to me, that it made sense. There was none of this, you should not, you should not. That was just what the people at the front of the church would say. It's got nothing to do with Ellen White. It was their interpretation. That's still happening today, by the way. So I said, oh, that looks interesting. She said some things about health. That looks interesting. Started talking about things like Dr. Kellogg. I looked at Dr. Kellogg. He's an interesting guy. He was a celebrity doctor in his day. In fact, all the celebrities of the world used to come to him for help and healing. I thought to myself, you know what, I wouldn't mind doing something like that. And so that was my goal in my head. All right, from that moment until I was 19, I wanted to get into medical school so I could be like Dr. Kellogg. I told you I kind of went off course when I got into medical school, but it's always been my desire. And then I realized a lot of the best medicine in the world comes from what God has given us. And you put it together. So yeah, I could be what I would consider a standard doctor, or I could devote myself to this healing process. Just another little sidebar, I will say, I didn't go to a very good school, right? I went to a very poor school, terrible school actually. And when I was a teenager, I would look around and I'd say, how on earth am I going to get to medical school? You know, there are about 200 people in my year. Every year, maybe 3 would go to further education. Now, I'm not talking university, I'm talking further education. That's how bad the school was. How am I going to get into medical school? I'm going to church every Sabbath. I've got people praying for me. I've got friends praying for me, mothers in the church praying for me. I had so much prayer going on that I remember saying, if ever I get to be a doctor, yeah, I'm going to do it for God. I'm going to be a doctor for God. And so all of those things kind of came together to make me feel, I'm not going to do the standard. I'm going to do what I believe God wants me to do. And that's exactly why I'm doing it. And to the young people, there are not many here, I would say there is this temptation to go down the standard route, to go down, whatever it is. You may be in law, medicine, business, whatever. I tell you, if you listen hard enough, God is showing you that there is a better path. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with law, there's nothing wrong with medicine. I'm telling you, God is telling all of us there is a better path where I want to use all of your skills. I'm not saying everyone must be a doctor, but but God wants to use all of your skills, whether it's in cooking, medicine, law, teaching. He's got a bigger path for you. And he keeps giving me these little bits of encouragement every step I go, so I keep going. Look, I'm here in the Lake District talking, okay? That's God. That's God that's done that. There you go. Yeah. Oh, thank you. You know. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank God. Look, well, it's everyone that speaks, you open up something else in my head. This thing about courage. Because people do ask me, yeah, I'd like to do something like you. Great. I think that's wonderful, and I do encourage it. And I mean the word encourage, because it does take a bit of courage. It's not a nice thing. I was, I can tell you. So I was studying to be a surgeon, and I was being trained, I'll say, at the Cambridge rotation. If I tell you what that means, it just means Cambridge University. There are different places to study medicine, right? Universities. Cambridge is a university. You've heard of it. It's a good university. But very few people from Cambridge, only 6 people get to do the surgical rotation at Cambridge. This is like the golden place to study. Now, for somebody to say, I'm going to leave that and do something that nobody's ever heard of. Nobody's heard of lifestyle medicine. Yeah, that doesn't make much sense. It takes a little bit of courage, yeah? It takes a little bit of courage. And then when you discover things that your colleagues think is a load of rubbish, but you know it's true, it takes courage to keep going. I don't know if you've ever heard of this gentleman, because he typifies it for me. His name is Ignatius Semmelweis. Have you heard of him? Okay, he's a Hungarian doctor. This is the doctor who discovered that washing hands between patients saves lives. He's the first person to discover this. Before that, people were just going from patient to patient, from a dead corpse to a newborn baby, and the babies were dying. Nobody knew what was causing it. He said, he looked into the Bible, by the way, and said, I think if we just do what the Bible says and wash our hands, that might... All of his colleagues hated him. Long story short, he was right, obviously, but he ended up in a mental institution and killed himself because of how he was treated. The way you have to be as a pioneer is you have to have a bit of courage. It means you also have a little bit of independence. You also must be really resting on God. It's not good enough to be coming to church and saying your amens and singing your songs. You really have to have a proper connection. I'm not perfect, but you have to have some kind of a connection, because when everything goes against you, what have you got to stand on? If your own church, if your own profession goes after you, what do you then do? So for the young people who are thinking about this, I guarantee you, when you're doing this good work, you will be tested. You will be tested, sometimes you may think beyond your own limits. But with God, all things are possible, and with God, He gives you the courage. My courage comes from the fact that I know I'm not doing anything wrong, and I know I'm doing things according to His word. That's it. And that's what Dr. Kellogg said. He said, look, the reason why I'm ahead of all the other doctors is because I look at the science, I look at God's word, and where they agree, I adopt it. Where they don't agree, I leave it. And that's kind of what I try and do today. There are all these new fashions that will come and go. The ketone diet, the carnivore diet, they will come and they will go. They don't agree with what the Bible says. So I stick to what the Bible says with the science. Okay, thank you. That's an interesting point. Sorry.
After childbirth, women tend to have a bit of episodes of being forgetful. You go down the stairs and you think, what was I looking for again?
Yes.
And then you have to retrace your steps and remember.
Yes.
What causes that? Is it signs and symptoms of dementia? Or
Okay, good question. Yeah. The good news is it's got nothing to do with dementia. Nothing to do with dementia. Now, gentlemen, let's agree on something. So none of us are going to give birth as gentlemen. There's probably nothing more traumatic to a human body than giving birth to another human being. Even when you think about not just the pain, but the pain as well. So the body, the brain, I mean, God is so wonderful that He releases hormones that... You have a good laugh. It's the men having a laugh about childbirth. You know, I tell you what. When I did my rotation in gynecology and obstetrics, and it was 8 weeks, I think, 8 weeks or 10 weeks, I would come out of the hospital and I would look at women in a different way. What? You actually gave birth. You did that. Honestly, it changed my whole view. I looked at my mother in a different way. You went through all of this? Yeah, so because it's so traumatic, God has designed it that your brain starts to release these chemicals that dampens the pain, but also dampens the memory of the pain. And as you're dampening the memory of the pain, certain things, other things, you forget as well. So you might think, oh, it's a bit inconvenient, but it's actually part of a tool to help women get through. And hopefully you're with a very sharp man who can fill in the gaps. Aren't you? I don't know. Okay, sorry.
what can you tell us about menopause? We all go through menopause differently. So it doesn't have a particular question. Just how would you allow women to go through menopause in a way that is not so traumatic?
Yeah, when you say we all go through it. Okay, all right. Yes, yeah, that's our burden to bear. No, it's an important thing. I remember seeing a woman a long time ago who was suffering severe problems of menopause, and she was an executive at work, and she was trying to manage it. And I started to think, well, how does, if it was a guy, we couldn't cope with that. I know we couldn't cope with that. But I guess the best thing to do is, well, what is menopause and why do we get these symptoms? And you can get some evidence as to why we get these symptoms from places in the world where they don't get so many symptoms. In the Far East, in China and Asia, they don't get as many. Sometimes they get no menopausal symptoms. And why should that be? And the main reason being is that throughout their lives, because the menopausal symptoms are based on estrogen, right? That's why they try and give you HRT, estrogen. It's your body's now crying out for estrogen. So it will cause different things in different areas of your body. Now in China, because they haven't had the same kind of diet as the Westerners, in other words, they haven't been loaded with milk and cheese and butter and all that throughout their lives, their receptors for estrogen are not crying out for so much estrogen, so they don't get as many symptoms. So if we know that, then what we should do is certainly eliminate the things that generate those receptors, like reducing milk, protein and all that, but also give you things like phytoestrogens, soya proteins. By the way, China eats more soya protein than anyone else as well. So things like that. And then there are other supplements that also promote those phytoestrogen receptors. Okay, so the more you do of that, the better it will be. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you properly.
About your ministry, do you have a clinic somewhere where people come and see you? So just want to know more about your ministry.
Yeah, so I used to have a big physical place where people come and see me. But before even the pandemic, I reduced that. I don't really do much of that at all. And most of it I can do online wherever I am in the world, because people are all over the world. They want to see you. So I do it mainly online, on the phone, whatever. So if people have issues, I tend to deal with it just online, because I can do it. Even when I'm up here, I can deal with it. Okay? Great. For example, what? What do you mean? No. So people come to me, so if you have a leg ulcer, I want to know what's the cause of the leg ulcer. If it's diabetes, we deal with diabetes. There's no point just dealing with the leg ulcer. Deal with what's causing the problem. Yes. Yes. I mean, you may as well ask, do I have bills? Yeah, I'm sure you're asking for a friend. If I was running a Mercedes dealership, I don't think anybody would ask me, "Do you charge?" Yeah. Okay. Go on. Yes. Yeah, and the intolerances, and so what tends to happen is people get intolerances even later in life. They never had them before, but they've got them later in life. And so what people do is they eliminate this and eliminate that. But the intolerances are based on your immune system changing for some reason. So something's happened to make the immune system change. And in your family, you might be more susceptible to it. But the most important thing to do is to downregulate the immune system. It's not an autoimmune problem, but I treat it like an autoimmune problem. So you eliminate the things that will cause it the most problems. Dairy, you give them loads of vitamin D3, a lot of the spices that we do, and much of it goes away because you've now downregulated your immune system. So intolerances, allergies, autoimmune problems, pretty much treat them the same. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Speak to people in the church, people outside the church. if there is a difference, in how they receive that information, do you modify how you share the information over the years? Do you modify how you, what you shared with us today? Have you found there's a difference in the receptiveness of people in the church and people outside of the church?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question, and I'm going to try and be diplomatic about it. There is a difference. There is a difference. But the difference, I don't think, is between people inside or outside of the church. I would say the difference is between people, if I use this term, people who are awake and people who are asleep. Both categories occur inside and outside of the church. There are people outside of the church who are much more awake to what is going on than most of the people in church. So when you speak to them, they'll say, oh, right. I didn't realize it had anything to do with faith and all that, but yeah, I can see something's happening. And yet there are people in the church who have been here for decades and don't see it at all. In fact, you know, you talked about difficulties. Most of the difficulties I've had have come from the church. Now, I've been a director in our conference. You know, you see me, I'm all over the place for conferences, general conference. But the biggest issues I've ever had are with especially Adventist doctors. Yeah, Adventist doctors. Adventist doctors who seem to think that, no, we must just do the same route that the world does. And they're the ones that cause the big problems. But no, the definition, if you, I mean, forgive me for using this term, you know, the definition between the sheep and the goats is not about who comes to church or not. I'm being diplomatic. Do I change the message accordingly?
Because people outside the church, would they say sometimes be more receptive and modify people?
Okay, so in terms of people outside the church, if I'm called to do something outside of the church, I always do give a hint of my faith, right? It has to be. But I don't lay it on as thick. If I'm doing it, however, in a Pentecostal church or another type of church, let me tell you, the Pentecostals accept what I say more than anybody, more than the Adventists, by far. Because the Pentecostals will say, I've never heard of this. I didn't know this existed. Many people are, oh yeah, we've heard it before. You know, Ellen White, we've heard it before. But no, the Pentecostals really lap it up. Yeah, very good. Just one more from you. From everybody? You're speaking for everybody. So this is the last question. Okay, thank you. Go ahead. You have a what? Diabetes and stroke. Okay. No, I don't deal with acute patients that come in with stroke. Yeah, so if they're producing a lot of protein, apart from, I mean, if it's chronic, and if it's not genetic, okay, if you are lowering the amount of animal-based protein in the diet, if you're lowering the amount of sugar in the diet, it will certainly reduce that expression. But, I mean, I must have dealt with maybe 3 in my life, not many. Say that again? Low animal protein, absolutely. Low sugar, low animal protein. Everything that excites the nervous system, everything that excites the cells will make that condition worse. So you just do the complete opposite. Right. Have we come to the end? So it was the last, okay. Okay. I shouldn't say that because hands go up when I say that. Yes. I'll hand you over to the expert.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I don't understand. Sorry. Yeah, so, hi. So I found that, because I'm from a Caribbean background, Chidi's from an African background, but I found that when I was trying to share with friends and family years ago to change to a plant-based diet, the objection was, but they love meat. We grew up eating things like chicken curry, all kinds of foods that involve meat. And it's a very difficult thing for them to give that up. So they start with good intention. They'd make one meal with chickpeas and then, they'd give up. So what I thought would be quite good to do is to recreate the recipes from a Caribbean background, like chicken curry, some Nigerian dishes, where you don't feel that you're missing the meat. So it tastes like, so I use things like mushrooms and tofu to recreate that meat taste, because we haven't given that meat necessarily because of, we didn't like the taste. So you can absolutely recreate that taste of meat, but when you eat it, it's good for you, it's healthy, and it's doing all the things that Dr. Chidi promotes. So that's the idea.
Very good, yes, My better looking half, obviously. Yes, and so plant-based, yes, absolutely. I can speak highly of not just the taste of the food, but the benefits of the food. It's better. Yours looks better than that. Yeah. So very good, thank you. Have we come to the end? Lose weight. Next question. It is that simple. Now you might say, oh, but I know slim people who snore. Yeah, they may be slim, but remember we talked about this visceral fat? So then have a lot of fat around this area inside that you can't see. Lose weight, it goes away. Simple. Fantastic. No more questions. Over to you, Doctor.
Yeah, I think we've come to an end of our afternoon session. It has been so interesting. We didn't want it to end, but time was jealous. So, Dr. Chidi and Mrs. Chidi, thank you very much for coming to Carlisle Church today. Thank you very much for the message. I think you have won a student from me. Marvelous. You wanted to give me a booth tomorrow, but I'm sorry to tell you that I won't have a booth because I will be assisting Dr. Chidi. I think I'll be sitting with him to tap into this wisdom. So that wisdom remains at Carlisle Church. And we keep on dishing it to the people. So it was an honor. Thank you very much for coming here. And Dr. Chidi will be with us tomorrow at the Health Expo. Everyone is warmly invited to come and continue with this message. And as for all of you, thank you very much for remaining behind to listen to this very important message. So thank you very much. We've come to the end. I think we'll close with a word of prayer. I'll ask my elder, Mr. Machingauta, can you close the session with a prayer, please? Yeah, I think Marvelous, you can even share his contact details on the WhatsApp groups if that's okay, so that most people are on the church WhatsApp group. They can. Okay, Elder Machingauta.
Before I pray also, just a reminder that next Sabbath we are not meeting here. It's a Women's Day. The address is going to be shared on the group. I think it's going to be broadcasted. That's a better way than the group now. I think there's a new group also, can be posted there. We're just trying to be careful now as so much is happening on WhatsApp with the being hacked. Is leaving us worried. So yeah, but it will be shared. So let's all, it doesn't mean next Sabbath there's no church. There should be church. So let's all gather in Beaumont where the address is going to be posted. Amen. Yes, let us pray. Gracious Father, thank you so much for this wonderful message that we should go back to the basics to remain healthy. When we are healthy, we are able to serve you with a sound mind, that we are able to discern that which is good and that which is bad. And we are able to choose you and to worship you with all our heart without any distraction. And we will be able also to put away the gods that we worship, because our minds, they clog us, they distract us when we eat this unhealthy food that also defiles our body, which is our mind. Help us to choose and to follow this message, this health message, which is good. It will also save us from wasting the resources by going to the doctors, by doing a last-minute resolution or a last-minute change. Help us to do a decision now than later. Sometimes we think, I would delay, I would do this, I would try next week, I would try next month or next year. Help us to start now. Thank you for this message. Help Brother Chidi is he going to go ahead preaching and teaching people about health living. Help us also to be a hand and also to give this message to many people who do not know it, especially also our children, to preach this message to our children and to do the diligent work as parents in this health message. Thank you so much, Father. Be with us now as we are going to separate. Help us to gather again tomorrow as we are going to put up a stand to help people know you through this message. I pray all this in the name of our loving Father, Jesus Christ. I pray. Amen.